when you cross a prolific writer with a gospel preacher who's also a great entrepreneur? The answer is Bishop T.D. Jakes. With his books, tapes, television ministry, and now a stage play, T.D. Jakes may be the most successful of the new megachurch leaders. Coming up, Bishop T.D. Jakes discusses his multi-million-dollar ministry, his wealth and personal success, and some surprising views on the role he says the black church should play in reviving the economic structure of America's inner cities.
Welcome to the program. The so-called megachurch is a modern-day phenomenon. In the case of Bishop T.D. Jakes, it is a one-man, multi-million-dollar enterprise, including book deals, television appearances, music recording contracts, video and audio tape sales, and even a fitness program. But what does all this have to do with going into all the world and preaching the gospel to all nations? Joining me to discuss this and other aspects of his success and ministry, the Bishop T.D. Jakes. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you. It's my privilege.
You were quoted at one point as having said that your success is a matter of timing. What did you mean by that?
I believe that timing is always a factor in any level of success, and I think that that particular quote was more in reference to my business endeavors and my ministerial endeavors. Timing is a crucial issue in anybody's success, because if you supply a product at a time that there is no need and that it is not relevant, then it ceases to be productive.
Your business endeavors. When we talk about church pastors, when we talk about ministers of your magnitude, we're talking about men who have an incredible head for business as well as for preaching the message of the gospel. Tell me, Bishop Jakes, can or should pastors today be good businessmen, or is it better to leave that to someone else?
I think it depends. Each individual brings to the table their own giftings. You cannot be what you are not. And if you are not adept at business, that certainly doesn't mean that you're not called to minister. You can have administration people who take care of those matters for you, and it's very, very important that you do that, especially when it comes to the local church. I don't think that it's wise for the pastor to control all of the business without having at his disposal professionals who are able to advise him or implement policies for the church. Not only is it not wise, it's often not legal.
We'll come back to that in just a few moments, but I want to take care of some other business, and that's the business of talking to you about this play that you're involved in. Yes. It is another one of your many church-organized enterprises. And this church-oriented play, this family-oriented play, Woman, Thou Art Loose, is your latest venture.
Yes.
Congratulations on the launch of that venture.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask you, how's it going so far?
Well, it's going very, very well. I want to just put a footnote in it that it's not a church play from the standpoint that it was not spawned by the church, it was spawned by me. And I think one of the great challenges in defining who I am is that I am so diversified that all of those various roles blend in together. Mm-hmm. But it is something that I did outside of my own local church, but something that I've had a passion to do for a number of years. It's going very, very well. We're in Detroit, we're at the Opera House, and we're just really enjoying the opportunity to share with Michigan as a whole and Chicago. People have been coming from everywhere to be a part of the play. It's a dramatization of the broken life of a young lady mm-hmm. who runs into a lot of dysfunctions and traumas in her life. And it is subtly ministerial from the standpoint that we want to describe and articulate effectively some of the challenges and after effects from childhood traumas.
Now, you said subtly ministerial. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that this play was calculated to entertain as opposed to minister?
I think you can do both, and I think that's the whole point of the play, that something that is entertaining can also be edifying. The challenge of our generation, if we're going to broaden our turf and be able to reach a wide span of people, is that we often have to entertain and edify within the same context. If we're going to minister to people outside of our walls and offer to people who don't normally go to church an opportunity to receive a message in a palatable format, we have to diversify.
When you talk about diversity, there are those who would criticize the presentation of such material in the name of ministry. They say that it is too secular. They say that it takes on the aura of entertainment a la world style.
Right.
That gets into the issue of attaching value judgments to things like
True.
Music and drama and writing and dance and all these other things. Should we attach value judgments to such things, or should we accept them on their own merit and for their own value?
I think it's absolutely impossible to stop people from having an opinion. You're denying them a right to be an individual. Criticism goes with the process. No matter what we do, there are always going to be people who think it ought to be done this way or that way. And if we allow that to stifle our own opinions, then we deny our constitutional right. One of the great things about this country is the freedom of speech and the freedom of choice. And we have a right to explore our own religious values, regardless of what they are. That's what makes America wonderful.
You're on the road with this play.
Yes.
You're experiencing what it's like to be an executive producer, a road manager, yes. A production manager.
Yes.
What are some of the things you're learning about being out here with this kind of enterprise?
It's an interesting business venture. It's a very cliquish arena where they're used to dealing with certain types of people. One of the great strengths that I've always had in every business pursuit I've ever done is that I was a novice and I wasn't mentored, and some of my greatest weaknesses have been my greatest strengths, that I did not pick up the plagues and diseases that were normally ordinary within that genre. Mm-hmm. And so in the process, I didn't know that it couldn't be done, so I did it. And that's been my philosophy throughout life, to go in naively and allow my own mind and my own convictions to determine the direction of the play. I feel very protective of it because it's something that was birthed through prayer and a vision that I had in my own heart to produce, and to make sure that the integrity of the message is not compromised with the process of that community has been an essential part of what I'm doing. I'm basically security to protect the integrity of the vision that I birthed.
You have mentioned a word that is dear to my heart as one who has worked in news and journalism and does journalistic style interviewing in this forum, in this medium: integrity of the message. The message, what is it, Bishop Jakes, that you are disseminating? What is the message?
You know, it's a broad issue. We could probably take the whole interview and talk about what I'm really trying to say. My message goes, obviously, I'm a Christian, unapologetically a Christian, but not narrowly a Christian. There are many sociological issues that are facing our generation that don't necessarily fit within the context of the gospel message that Christ died and he rose again for our sins, though that is a wonderful message to be articulated. There are many problems, particularly in the African American community, but not limited to, that I often address, whether it relates to economic empowerment for people. We've spawned GED programs for people who didn't graduate from high school. We've adult education, literacy programs, computer skills that don't fit within the context of the gospel, but are a part of the message that I would like to disseminate to the community. You can do it, a motivational message. I was described as a Christian motivational speaker. And I think that's an adept description. It is not just Christian, but it's motivational, it's challenging, it deals with family values, it deals with allowing families who were non-traditional families to develop traditional values. Because many of us were raised in non-traditional settings. We weren't always raised with a mom and a dad, 2 children and a dog. Some of us came up through adverse situations, but we can land on our feet. That is subtly the message of the play. That has been a strong conviction and a part of my life. Racial reconciliation has been a part of my life. Empowering men coming out of prison to know that they do have second chances and second options. All of those are issues that don't always fit within the context of the pure gospel, but are relevant in areas that I feel called to address.
I talked about, or at least I wanted to mention the fact that in our society, in this westernized culture, in our commercialized, materialized, sanitized way of living in America, we have a situation where many would look at you and say, he is the perfect example, the consummate embodiment of selling and sensationalism. And that selling and sensationalism would seem to obviate the simplicity of the message of the gospel. And the Bible is, after all, the ultimate self-help book, isn't it? Your response?
It certainly is the ultimate self-help book. And tragically, many, many people have not been able to unlock the many, many valuable truths that are locked in the Bible. What I have been able to do, and many ministers have been able to do, is to articulate and to extract from the complexity of the Bible the simplicity of the gospel and the relevancy of the gospel. Many, many lay people find it very, very difficult to open up their Bible and unlock that kind of treasure. Again, as it relates to controversy or criticism, that goes along with any profession. And it goes along with being an adult and making choices, and people having options. Regardless of what you do, what you teach, or what you believe, you can always find a segment of the community that does not agree with that. As it relates to what I do, putting the pastoral part aside and dealing with me as an author, I choose to use my writing gifts to write about Christ and to write about biblical principles and to write about women raising their self-esteem and to write about relationships between husbands and wives. And anytime I do that, and I've done it with about 8 different publishers, the labor is worthy of his reward. We negotiate contracts just like any other author would. I'm compensated just like any other author would be compensated. It would be ridiculous for the intelligent American citizen to say that Stephen King could receive royalties for writing about demons, and because I write about Christian principles, I should not receive royalties. That would be bigoted and prejudiced, and most Americans are really not like that.
Do you think that those who would tend to see what has happened, particularly to men like you, that is the personal enrichment that comes as being the head of a ministry like T.D. Jakes Ministries or the Potter's House Ministries, a ministry that has made an estimated $20.5 million in the last year, but has been flagged as an organization that is above financial reproach? I want to be careful to say that. Now you have this platform for being personally enriched, and therefore you become a target. You become a target for people who say, why is he getting rich doing this? He's a minister.
People who would say that would jump to a conclusion without understanding my personal wealth and where it came from. They'd have no way to understand it if I didn't articulate it. I would normally not have a need to articulate it. I certainly don't think that there is a parallel between my personal wealth and the strength of the ministry. The great bulk of that $20 million is spent in maintaining 150 employees with full-term health benefits, life insurances, and things like that so that they can feed their families, maintaining our church. We just bought and paid for $3.2 million worth of property for our church edifice, and then bought 231 acres of land, $4 million worth of property that we paid off in 6 months. That kind of aggression and resolving of debt is indicative of the fact that the minister is not taking the money. That is significant. While on the other hand, I have been blessed, but I have been blessed because I'm a CEO over 3 different companies that are for profit, and I do make profit doing them, and I enjoy doing that. And one of the great things about being me is that I was able to do more than one thing and still be true to my Christian principles.
And I want to come and talk more about that when we come back from this break. I want to talk about who T.D. Jakes is,
Great.
which equals what you do now,
Certainly.
and why you're successful.
Great.
Stay with us. We'll continue this conversation with Bishop T.D. Jakes. And of course, you are watching American Black Journal. We are back. My guest is Bishop T.D. Jakes. Bishop Jakes, once again, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
As a young man, you were aggressive when it came to selling, of all things. Where do you think you got this love of entrepreneurship? It has been said of you as a child that you were pushy.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
That's because they asked my next door neighbor who grew up with me, and her little boy and I used to kind of tussle around out in the yard. That might be the impetus for calling me pushy. But I certainly have had entrepreneurial influences all of my life. My father started a business with a mop and a bucket and ended up with 52 employees. My grandmother washed clothes for the neighborhood and sent herself through college and graduated from college at 55 years old and taught school until she was 66 years old and retired from the school system. My grandmother on the other side raised 15 children, 13 of which graduated from Tuskegee College. I've been well inundated with people who pull themselves up.
Models of success.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Against adversity and challenges. And that has certainly influenced me. My father was a businessman all of his life. And I grew up, that statement came from, my mother used to raise greens out the garden. And I used to sell the greens to the community, $1 a bag, and give them a receipt. and became the subject of many high school discussions when I was about 8 years old because I was doing business. Some of that was hard times. Some of that was commodity cheese and powdered eggs. Some of that was the good old-fashioned American concept that there's nothing wrong with hard work and the success is generated from it.
Some would say that hard work in America is a myth as far as black people are concerned. I understand on the one hand the mindset of a gospel preacher would be that race is not the stopgap. It is not the thing that can stop you. Only you can stop you. Now, some would expect a preacher to say that. But for many black people in America, the obstacle of race has been what seems to have held them back from achieving on any level, whether entrepreneurial, educationally, or whatever. You, however, have achieved against the odds. If we can say against the odds, we could talk about a man who does not have a college degree as such. Did you get your high school diploma?
Yes, well, a GED.
The GED, which some would say is a strike against many people because it means that you don't have what it really takes to stay, finish, and complete a task. But obviously, you fly in the face of that myth.
Oh, you have to. First of all, I dropped out of high school my senior year because my mother had multiple tumors and there was nobody at home to take care of her. My father had died when I was 16. I made the decision the last few months of high school to stay home and take care of my mother and chose to go back and get my GED. Then went on to West Virginia State College and pursued a degree in psychology. I do believe in pulling myself up. I think that the reason that I have been so believable to the average African American is because we all have had obstacles to overcome, and we need to see success in our color. We need to see successful people who did not get it by mishandling funds in the church, as we talked about earlier, or pimping women or selling drugs. We need desperately, the reason our young men are shooting each other down in the street is because they do not see success in their color often enough. To be able to represent them, and the 8,000 men that I pastor, our church is running almost 18,000 people, and 44% of them are men, so we're almost 50% men who call me dad and a father. We need fathers so desperately in our community who can pump into their heads the fact that the American dream is possible to us, that it is not always a nightmare, that we may have to work harder, and sometimes we may have to work smarter, but if we build our own barns, we can live in them. And I certainly want to be a part of that message.
Before the break, you were talking about many of the things the church was doing. The Potter's House, which is based in Dallas, Texas. You were talking about land acquisition, building businesses, employing people, paying salaries, and more. One of the criticisms of the church, if you will, and the black church in particular, is that for a group of churches as a conglomerate, as an aggregate, that pool of resources adds up to about $40 billion in the United States a year. That money, however, does not seem to get turned effectively back into the community to lift entire groups of people. And perhaps that's one of the reasons people find it so easy to attack individuals who seem to embody multimillionaire status and success like you.
Well,
Would you agree?
I think that one of the reasons they do it is that frustrated people always see themselves as a victim and look for somebody that they can accuse.
Would you agree that the church has been less than responsible, though, in its buoying of the community economically, especially considering what it takes out of it?
I would disagree because I think that's a generalization. I think that what the church does varies from person to person. I could sit here and list several churches that have impacted their community in significant ways. Drug rehabilitation programs like we have started in the state of Texas that has been authenticated and certified by the state of Texas, commended by the Governor Bush, who is over Texas, for its impact on the community. And other churches throughout the country are joining those programs. I think more than not, the negative press gets the headlines more than the positive press, but there are many churches doing many positive things. One of the things that's been very, very powerful for me is the fact, because I am a businessman, in and apart from my local church, I had the opportunity to channel the bulk of our church funds toward programs to help people, to feed the homeless. We feed homeless people every week. We bring them clothes. We help them to get jobs. We work with drug rehabilitation programs. We're out on the street on Fridays and Saturdays dealing with prostitutes, turning their lives around, dealing with teenage pregnancies. We were able to be wonderful stewards over God's resources because the church is not overly encumbered with taking care of me and mine. My lifestyle could be afforded in and a part of whether I pastored another day in my life. But I have been able to teach business principles. That's why we have a business network set up in our church for 500 businesses that exist in our church, teaching young black men and women and Hispanic black men and women and some whites how to gender business, how to have Christian integrity and become successful. See, many black men today who are coming out of prison or coming out of drugs, coming out of negative circumstances, are looking for somebody to hire them. The reality is if your resume doesn't meet the standard, they're not going to hire you. But that does not mean that you can't be successful. You can gender your own business, start your own company, pull your resources together, and if we can have unity, we can pull ourselves up. While the church has done many things wrong, it's done many things right. It has been the catalyst for the civil rights movement. It has been the source of every major change in the African American community. All of our great leaders have come out of the pulpit, not out of the White House. Whether you're talking about Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King, the sources of the greatest impetus of change in our community has come through the church. Even Farrakhan, when he got ready to gather 1 million men, could not do it without coming to the pulpit of Christian churches to do so. And one of the things that needs to be understood, if you want to reach the African American community, you have to go through the auspices of the church, because either we used to be in church, or our mothers go to church, or grandma and them go to church. Somebody in our communities go to church. And that's why politicians and political officials can no longer ignore clergy, particularly African American clergy, because we are the mouthpiece to our community. Faults, sores, and all, we are still the mouthpiece.
The community.
Yes.
The church. How do you tell the two apart in our culture today, particularly when they seem to be melding more?
That's true.
Mirroring one another more.
Yes.
And many of the maladies of our society seem to outwork themselves in many church congregations. That which has been a catalyst and strong agent for change in our culture now seems to be being conformed to the culture, as opposed to having the opposite effect. Perhaps that is a surface statement, but I challenge you with that statement, Bishop, because I believe you have an answer for it.
I certainly do. There are certain things that we need to realize. I was in a barbershop some years ago, and a bunch of, you know how barbershops are, they were indicting the church and saying, you know, you got this going on in the church, and they got this going on in the churches, and they were speaking in general. And I said, well, listen, gentlemen, I said, we have to apologize, but we had no place to fish from other than the world. So if you drop your nets into the world, whatever was in the world is going to be taken into the church. And somebody's got to get their hands dirty in the process of rehabilitating those factors, issues, and areas. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man who dropped his nets into the sea and took in all manner of fish. Whatever is going on in the community, whatever is there in the community, should be represented in the church, but it should be represented in a state of restoration and rehabilitation, and that's the challenge. The other thing that you need to note when it comes to dealing with the church, our church has some 55 different social ministries going on. There are many others. Bishop Eddie Long, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church there in Atlanta, has done wonderful things for the Lord. Bishop Andrew Merritt right here in Detroit. Congressman Floyd Flake, who pastored in Jamaica, New York. Bishop Alfred Owens in Washington, D.C., and many, many others. I better not start naming names. I'm going to get in trouble with all my friends. But my point is there are hundreds of prominent men, regardless of denomination, and women who are doing tremendous things in their community that really need to be highlighted and need to be appreciated. The church is reaching the world, but we cannot do that with lily white hands and not get our hands dirty. Our sons have fallen in the mud, and whoever reaches for them is going to get mud on them. But we believe that the prize is worth the stain.
Bishop Jakes, I wish we had more time to explore other issues that I know you could address handily, but I'm going to have to cut it off here because we're out of time.
I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Likewise, and I know that our viewers are thrilled that you've expressed your heart on this program. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this edition of The Journal. And of course, you are watching American Black Church.